Welcome back to 360 Success Podcast. Again, I'm your host, Dr. Ryan Knight, joined again today. Actually, it's the same day. We're recording another episode. She wanted to change outfits, but yeah. Anyway, it's the same day. And most people are on audio, so they can't hear us. Anyway, welcome to the podcast. Today, we're going to talk about in-laws and extended family conflicts, which can be a biggie when it comes to marriage relationships. When I just talk about the topic even, I think about Henry Cloud and his boundaries books, boundaries in marriage, boundaries in the workplace, boundaries in families, and just boundaries, period. They had us read that, I believe, when we were starting the adoption process, maybe, or in counseling early on.
I don't remember.
Okay. So if you haven't read that book and you have issues with boundaries, you will want to make sure that you get that, because we're going to be referencing some of the material.
Well, but let me tell you, boundaries, I think women automatically go to like body boundaries.
That's one thing.
That is one thing, but it's not the premise of the book. It's about how to respect your person and your emotions and your mental bandwidth, those boundaries to protect yourself. So,
right.
Okay. I can't do it with that in there. You're way better than that. I was going to start whistling.
So let's just talk about in-laws. So when you're trying to blend your life together in marriage, we tell people it's like taking two separate individuals and their life and their histories and everything else, and you put them in a blender and you get this gross kind of mix that comes out. There's no other way to put it, but you're trying to create this life, a beautiful life, but it's ugly sometimes. And this can be one of the times when the extended family gets involved. And I think that some people never follow through on what the Bible says when it's talking about marriage. It says, "For this cause shall a man or a woman leave their father and mother and cleave unto with their spouse." When I see that, I think of we've traveled a lot or seen like animals in trees, like that sloth in Costa Rica that time. It was actually a mama with her baby, but she was clinging onto that tree, right? And because that's where she lived. You think of koala bear, they cling onto the trees for dear life. And so, which I think like the number one cause of death in koalas, my brain is falling from the tree. But
same with you.
Yeah, almost. So that could be
a whole other.
We got all these.
There we go.
We got so many stories. So interference and disagreements about boundaries with in-laws that strain your relationship. So, I'm the favorite son-in-law, so we never really had issues with her parents. Mom and Dad, sorry, it was mostly with mine. Really?
Well, no, I mean, think about like when you first get married and you have that first Christmas. And then I don't know if you've had this discussion like, okay, we're going to flip-flop. We're going to do Thanksgiving with your family and then Christmas with my family. And it just gets to a point, especially if they're not in the same city or town. It's never fair. And then when you have kids, that's a whole other dimension, because the grandparents, and now that we're grandparents, we totally understand. We want to be there when they open their presents. So early on, my parents did not live in the same town like they do now. So we don't have that issue as much. We all have every holiday together, all of us.
Except your parents still alternate. They'll go to other siblings. But
so that was our first, probably, we got married during Christmas. So that was like the start. And then probably the biggest riff you might have caused was when you told my mom that we were no longer traveling for Christmas.
Yeah. So a little background on that. And like I said in the last episode, at different times of life, there are different expectations. And, one of the things for me, and I think you to a point, once we started having a family, you kind of look forward to that, getting up on Christmas morning
with just you.
Early with your little nuclear family and your kids in their home. And so, Santa comes and you want them to be able to open those gifts and just, you guys have a good time. And if other family are there, it's great. If not, it's great too. But what really kind of did that for us, I guess, was when we used to have a cabin up in Colorado. And and at that time, whenever we did have time off, we went up there a lot. So I just kind of informed the rest of the family that, look, we're no longer traveling between homes on holidays. We will either be here at our home or we'll be at the cabin in Colorado. You guys are welcome to join us at either, but that's where we'll be. This night, family is where they're going to be. Now, did that hurt feelings?
Yes.
Absolutely. Your mom cried. But I will tell you also what I was doing was I was setting the boundary for us and our family. And I had to do the hard thing. As you know, you can think it's, I don't know, but I feel like as the man that was part of my responsibility. Look, here's the traditions that we're going to have in our family. And she agreed, but she didn't want to hurt the rest of her family's feelings. Also, we were poor and broke. And part of that same thing is we're also not going to do these drawings because I can't afford to buy 45 more gifts at the time. Right. Yeah. Even though we did have a second home in Colorado. Let's be honest. I just didn't want to buy 4 or 5 more gifts for people that I only see or never see.
You skipped about 10 years, though, in there. It's not like we had Josh and then we had the cabin at the same time, just for reference.
Right. I just wanted when he was younger to be at home for Christmas. And so that was probably the biggest thing I did that hurt, your mom in particular, her feelings. Right.
And then we,
but I am the favorite son-in-law. Let's not.
You have a shirt. She gave you a shirt that says it. Yeah. She might have given everybody else a shirt too. We don't know that.
Well,
anyway,
I got her a shirt that said, my favorite son-in-law gave me this shirt.
So it's a tit for tat.
Yeah, it's a deal.
But we also have had the pleasure. Well, we've lived with your parents 2 times. Mm-hmm. One is when we first moved to the Texoma area, and we
trying to redo the house so we could move into our own house.
Right. We were leasing the clinic in Denison and remodeling it. At the same time, we bought a 100-year-old home.
That was condemned.
Were crazy. It had no running water, no electricity, no AC, no central heat and air, whatever. Anyway, so we lived with his parents, I think 9 months.
She says 9, I say 6. After 32 years, we still disagree on it, but it's okay.
Well, 9 doesn't matter. That's the same number, whatever. And that was challenging because within that house, there were expectations that his parents had that maybe I didn't know about or whatever. So there were some conflicts during that time.
Absolutely.
For sure.
And in every home, there's kind of a position of authority, right? There's either the matriarch or patriarch of the home. And, like when you come in to my home, it's my home and I'm the king over that castle. And so when we were living with my parents, my dad was. But again, this is where boundaries come in. Yes, it is his home. It is, he has say-so. But he doesn't have the say-so to tell my wife what to do or whatever, because as independent adults, that's where you have to communicate. Again, expectations and communications. That will stop a whole lot of problems. But setting those boundaries, and there were some heated discussions because during that time, I can recall, and a couple of times after that, where it was, sorry, Dad, not trying to throw you under the bus. We're just trying to be real because everybody's got stuff. Because he will listen to these. He loves the podcast. But, and Mom, not so much, but she might chime in every now and then about, again, fairly early on, how they thought a wife should be for me or my wife should be. They would sometimes make little comments or little jabs or whatever. And so we had to have a confrontation or collision, if you will, over that. It was healthy. It wasn't pretty. There were tears, right? But, I just said, look, that is my wife. God says for me to leave my parents and to cleave to her. And so, if you want to continue down this path and nitpick or whatever, then don't make me make a choice because I've already chosen her and, still do. But we got past that. It's great. They actually live with us now. It's great. But again, you have to have those conversations like we talked about. You can't avoid the conflict because it builds resentment. And I don't want to resent my parents. I don't want them to resent us. So we had that, what I call collision, but I was very clear on the boundaries and I was respectful, but I was very tearful. It was very hurtful. But I stood up for her and I stood up for us. And I said, here's the boundaries. And if you ever do it again, I think one time it started, I'm like, we've already had this conversation. We're not doing this or I'm out. And so,
Well, I'm just thinking, how the world, what comes around. So, then we're talking 20 years later or so, where we live now. Up until this last Christmas, we had 4 generations in our house. And so we had our middle son and his wife and their 2 kids, which are our 2 precious grandbabies. And again, it was kind of one of those like deja vu moments, because now I was in my mother-in-law's spot where she was 20 years before then. And, I could kind of see how she might have felt, because
distance and perspective.
Yeah, because wait, this is my house. Why aren't you picking up here or doing this? And my favorite mantra that I have to say to myself all the time is, it's not wrong. It's different.
She says it all the time. But that's true. You want to write that one down. It's not wrong. It's different.
Because I didn't want to destroy my relationship with my son or daughter-in-law, or for my grandkids to see, something that would cause them to have separation from us. And it wasn't easy.
But they lived with us for 6 years.
But yeah. And it was some of the greatest times of our lives, having 4 generations. And a lot of people would just be like, the noise and the chaos. And we also had 2 dogs. And then Olivia's brother lived with us for about a year. And so
Kyron lived with us back again.
Yeah. And so, when you look back on it, though, I mean, we would not exchange it.
No.
At all. We had to make that decision that we had to choose the relationships over being right or whatever. And not to say we didn't make mistakes.
No.
And Olivia and Josh, I know if you're listening, we did lots of mistakes, but we were very proud to be able to have that time with them and watch our grandbabies grow up. And now they're gone and we miss them terribly.
Yes. Like I said early on in the podcast, and when we're talking together, you can overcome about anything with mercy and grace and communication. Because don't assume that the other person has ill intent. Assume that they have good intent. It's just a miscommunication. And so that's where, if you don't want to avoid the conflict, you want to sit down and talk through them and not attack them, but talk about the issue. Look, when you guys do this, or when we come in, and let's say we've been on date night and there's a sink full of dishes, we would just appreciate it, because we feel obligated, because it's our home, to clean it and have everything tidy before we go to bed, so that when we get up, everything's where it should be. And that's just the way we are. When you have 9, 10 people living in your home, that's very difficult. But again, you have to communicate those things, or every single time it's just like, get that little source of frustration. It kind of pricks you. And then it becomes way bigger than it should be. And we did have that a few times. We had some sit downs to go, okay, we're frustrated. You guys are frustrated. We need to talk through this. We've had to do it, some with my parents and some with, I think a lot of listeners probably don't really know our family dynamics so much, but, Amy and I, we, I say practically raised we call him our oldest son. He's actually my nephew, but Kyron, and, his lovely wife, Shyla. We didn't raise her, but I've known her since she was little. And so we've had him for a long time. And then we have Josh, which is our only biological son. And then we have Braden, which we adopted. And we'll talk about that and what led us to adoption on probably the next episode that we do together. That was tough. What led us to adoption? We call that the dark years. I'm not sure if we're going to be able to record that today. If we do, we'll be in the same clothes. If not, we won't be. We're not recording that today. But that'll be a whole episode on its own, and it'll probably be a little bit longer and probably tearful, because just talking about it, the emotion is there. But anyway, listen, if you've enjoyed the podcast, we would appreciate it. It would mean a whole lot to us if you would like it, throw us some love with some stars, and share this with other people that you think it'll help. Because our goal is to really bring people's success full circle in their business and in their family, the whole thing, right? We want this life to the full, and we want everyone else to experience it as well. And what was that quote we just had today?
I'd have to look at my notes.
I got these notes right here. Let me look real quick. The reason that we're doing this, we want to include the marriage in it, is because no amount of success can overcome failure in the marriage or in the home. So I want to leave you with that. Again, if you like our show, you like our stuff, we'd appreciate it if you'd share it with somebody. It'd mean the world to us. Thanks so much.
Thank you.